Well, good morning, Christ Community Church. Pastor Tommy here, and we're starting a series of devotionals we're going to be doing in the week of Holy Week. And so on this Monday morning, we're going to be in John chapter 12. And just to give you a little bit of context, in John chapter 11, the chapter before, Jesus raises the man Lazarus from the dead. And it's a chapter that's filled with drama. Jesus comes once he hears of Lazarus' death, actually 3 days after he hears of Lazarus' death. And he is greeted by Lazarus' sisters, Mary and Martha. And obviously, both of them are very distraught about Lazarus' death. And Jesus himself is emotionally moved by Lazarus' death. But he declares to Martha that he is the resurrection and the life. It's a culmination of the I am statements that we hear in the book of John. And Jesus proves that to them by raising Lazarus from the dead. And so that's what happens in John chapter 11. But then in John chapter 12, we kind of see what happens after that. And so we're going to read it together. John chapter 12, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 8. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at table. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you always have with you, but you do not always have me." So in this scene, we kind of see two primary characters. The first is this lady, Mary. You know, Jesus is at the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and he's having dinner. Martha is serving dinner. Lazarus is eating with Jesus at the table. But then Mary comes, and she does something that is strange, at least strange to us. She demonstrates gratitude to Jesus. She ascribes worth to Jesus. She worships Jesus by pouring expensive ointment on the feet of Jesus and then wiping his feet with her hair. The ointment that she was using, we learn, is worth 300 denarii, which is, a denarius is about 1 day's wage for a worker. And so 300 denarii is about a year's worth of wages for a single person. So it's a very expensive bottle of ointment, and she pours all of it on Jesus' feet. Not only that, but she wipes his feet with her hair. And we learn that, from in Corinthians, Paul talks about how a woman's hair is her glory. And so she uses the part of her that demonstrates her glory, and she uses it to wipe Jesus' feet, perhaps the lowliest part of his body. And it's a very shocking but excessive way in which she's able to show Jesus her gratitude that he has raised her brother from the dead, that he has done the impossible in her life. And so we have Mary on one hand, but then on the other hand, we have Judas, someone we're very familiar with, Judas Iscariot. And Judas, rather than seeing this as an act of worship, he sees it as a waste. It's a waste to him. He says, "Man, why was this ointment wasted in this way? It could have been sold, and the money could have been used to help the poor." And obviously, that's a reason that I think we all could say is justifiable. But quickly, the author gives us his real reason behind it. He was only upset. He only really saw it as a waste because he wanted to use the money for himself. He was a thief and was taking the money for himself. But in all of this, Jesus, in his response to Judas, shows us a deeper meaning. He tells Judas to leave her alone, and really what he says is that she was doing this to prepare him for his burial. That in preparation for his death, she has anointed his feet with ointment. And so there's a deeper reality that's going on here that Jesus is able to foreshadow for us. And so just maybe my closing thought as we look at this passage for this week is that, man, my prayer for you, church, my prayer for myself is that we would demonstrate the same kind of gratefulness for the resurrection. Obviously, Mary is responding to the resurrection of her brother. She's responding to the miracle that Jesus performed by raising her brother from the dead. But man, we should be praising Jesus the same way for the resurrection he's done in our life. Both, most importantly, his resurrection from the dead, that he defeated sin and death by rising from the dead. But also just the fact that he's raising us from the dead, that he has raised us from the dead, that we were dead in our trespasses and sins, but Christ has raised us to new life. And even he has raised those we love to new life, Lord willing, that there's people in your life who are Christians, that God has changed their life, and we can praise him for that and be so grateful for the work that he has done in our lives. And so my prayer is that we would lay it all at the feet of Jesus, that we would worship Jesus for what he is worth, that we would ascribe Jesus the worship that he is due, and that it would not be seen as a waste, that anything we use, any way that we any time we spend worshiping Jesus, that it would be seen as an outpouring of the worth that Jesus is worthy of. And so, church, that's my prayer for you this morning, this day, this Monday of Holy Week. And I look forward to sharing with you again tomorrow. God bless.